Hello everybody! I know it's been a while. I've been really busy, and it's been fun. It's been fun. Um, and so today, I finally have gotten around to editing and putting together my, like, first how I train my horses video. Um, for me, I'm going to do a how I train series. Not just like one big video explaining my method. I don't have a method. So one big video would not help because that video would be hours long. And so I'm just going to do kind of like a series where it'll be a how I train series, and whatever you want me to explain how I train, I'll get that done, and we'll kind of group it with other things. Today I am doing how to train your first few touches and your first few rides. So kind of like the first few that you would normally think of with horses. And so I have a bunch of clips with Legacy for the first few touches, and then a whole bunch of clips with Houdini and Blaze for the first few rides. And I'm going to explain what I normally do and why I do it. Legacy is my very first ever Mustang challenge horse. He was my 60-day Mustang challenge tip horse. And so all I had to do was make sure that by the time the challenge rolled around, he could lift up his feet, be led, and be loaded in and out of a trailer. And so that's kind of what I did. But so this is our first touches. And this is our very first touch. He's an absolute sweetheart. And something you have to remember is patience is key. If you have no patience, nothing's going to really work out for you. So Legacy's a little different. As you guys can tell, his first touch, he's kind of thinking about it. He doesn't really know if he's gonna, but I get a little closer to him, and then you can see his nostrils flaring like, oh, she's pretty close, what do I do? So he steps towards me, touches my hand, and then starts trying to nibble on it. So even though he probably would have gone farther, I immediately kind of stepped back and did all that. This is the next time I go out there to touch him. I have a glove on this time, so it's different. Yeah. As you can tell, he's kind of trying to block it out. He's trying to go, nah, you're not. Your hand's not right there. And so I kind of move, make sure he knows I'm there, and he can't really avoid me. And you'll see that he kind of comes around. He brings his face forward right here, kind of bumps me a tiny bit, so I leave. It's not as good as our very first touch, but I'll take it. And so then this is after a few times of me just doing kind of that. I can walk right up to him, I can pet his face, do all that. He was a fun little horse. He, as soon as he realized I wasn't going to hurt him, he was pretty dang okay with me just walking up and doing all that. But one thing you have to keep in mind with wild horses is they don't know what the heck you want, like, at all. Like, they don't know what you mean when you tell them to stop or give them a stop cue. They don't know what you mean when you're just walking right up to them. You've got to really kind of make sure that they're okay. And as you can tell, I slowly and slowly get more quicker with walking towards him. Also, here's an example of him just leaving. A lot of people, if a horse did that to them, I know that a lot of people would think that's disrespect, but in reality, no, that's just him being a baby, just kind of wandering off, not realizing what he's doing. And so then the next time he does that, I know that he's not going to freak out. So that's what I do, is I kind of just step in front of his drive line, make sure he understands I'm not going to hurt him, and I go right back to what we're doing. But especially for baby horses, you don't want to push them over their threshold. And the baby horses are going to know their threshold much better than you are. So don't think you can just walk right in and know what's best. And so then that's after about a week. I just barely put the halter on that day, and he did really good. And so all of this first touches and everything kind of come down to this at the show. They had us take off the halter, release our horses into a pen, and then we had to go up and catch them. Now, Legacy was definitely not the most trained horse there, especially out of the yearlings, but he was one of the most gentle while being caught. Did he have baby wiggles and he walked around? Yeah, but that's okay. That was his first full day being away from home, so he wasn't sure of what we were doing anyway. So I mean, he won me 6th place in that class, and that's a-okay by me. So he did really well. As you can see, it kind of all came down to that. All of those good first touches and all of that, it makes him know I'm not going to hurt him, and he's going to enjoy us kind of spending time together. And so I just wanted to come in here and say that it doesn't really matter if you're following a specific method or not. You just need to make sure that it fits your horse. For Legacy, our first touches were through a big round pen in my backyard, and he did phenomenal. He really, really touched me. It wasn't just a quick sniff and then run away. It was I'm gonna see if you have any food for me, which is really smart. I really enjoy horses who are like that, who are more curious. And those horses, I never take away their curiosity, because that's just something that you want a horse to have, especially a young horse. Okay, so now we are getting into the riding part of, I guess, everything. And so we're gonna be seeing a lot of Houdini, since he was the main horse that he was practically the first horse I started under saddle by myself. Right there, so you're gonna see a lot how I train. Right there, I really pulled back on him because he decided he was not going to stop. I gave him stop cues. I kind of sat deeper into my saddle. No response. This is his second ever ride. I didn't record his first one because his first one was not that pretty. It was actually pretty bad. I got on him, and then we both got frustrated, and so I got off and then went and did more research. So I normally don't ride my horses in bits, especially immediately. Oh, look, first trot. That's good. I would much rather have a horse that when he gets scared he stops than he starts to buck. So I'm perfectly okay with him stopping if he gets overwhelmed. And so that's what he did, so I said, that's fine. I also I was nervous too, because I had never trotted on him. And I had only had him for, I think, 4 months. and so I didn't know exactly how he was going to respond. So I did kind of grip that saddle horn, and that kind of made him react a little differently. But you're going to see that he gets much more fine with trotting later on. Oh, look, see, he stops much better. I give him a treat. I encourage that nice stop. And so yeah, so what I was saying before about bits, I don't normally ride my horses immediately in bits, but Houdini was special. I had worked with him with bits since we started working on the ground. I immediately started working on bits with him. So I decided to use that. Also because he's a very dull horse, and our first ride was actually in a halter, and he did not understand anything. So you can see that I don't use a ton of leg for the first ride. I'm going to use mostly rein because they're going to understand that kind of direct pressure more. And so he likes to, he used to cut corners a ton in my round pen, so, which is funny because I have no corners in my round pen. So I just made sure that he could at least go over the poles. Oh, look, more trotting. See, he's much more fluid and much better with that. There, I asked him to slow down, and he ended up going into a fence, but that's okay. He still slowed down. More trotting. He tripped right there. Mind you, I saddle trained him all in November, and I got a lot of rides in January, and quite a few in February. So most of my rides are in mud, so it's not pretty, but he's a really, really reliable horse. So yeah, I'm sorry that the camera's out of focus. This is when I was using my, like, little crappy camera. I will still sometimes use that, but nowadays I'm mostly using my phone. But yeah, so it's like, look, another trot. I kind of got a little nervous there. I felt him kind of tense up, and I got nervous and tensed up myself. But don't worry, well, it'll be fine. But anyway, so yeah, so he's look at that, much better trot. Even went over the poles really nicely. The reason why I have poles in there is because he always needed something to kind of remind him where his feet were. Like, he was really sure-footed and everything, but he also just kind of had a rough time. Like, he didn't like to pick up his feet, but he was very sure-footed, which was a weird combination, but he was that combination. But he was a complete sweetheart. You'll see him playing with the bits a ton. Like he just liked to play with the bit. He didn't really understand it. I know a lot of people who would see that and want to put a cavesson on him, which is just a really tight mini bridle underneath it, but it's not quite a bridle. It just keeps their mouth shut. So he did step on the poles. That was okay, so I slowed him down, and we went over him at a walk to make sure that he knew he was okay. The poles were fine. He just has to think about it a little bit more. Then we go back to trotting. So his trot was really nice. Oh, that was a beautiful stop. I forgot how wonderful he was as a horse. So then I praise him real good. I have him sit there, and then this is me getting off. I always like to swing my foot around and all that. I grab the saddle horn. I clearly lean forward and to the side so he knows that I'm getting off. And with all of that, he did really, really, really good. Absolute sweetheart. Something I also do all the time is I make sure my horses know the basics of liberty and just want to follow me, like what Houdini's doing here, because I know a ton of people that don't focus on that, and then when they get off their horses will either move away from them or just not want to move from that spot. that's something I absolutely don't want. I want, my idea of a finished horse is, like, during a session, a horse that's done with a session is, it's gonna follow you afterward. If your horse can't do that after you ride it, or after you do anything with it, I focus on that more. Here's a better angle of how I feed him treats when I'm on his back. I've done it with Blaze, I've done it with Marque. Here's another clip of Houdini's, I think, 4th ride. And so I was getting pictures in a video to send to his previous owners and my horse riding teachers of that time. This time he was in a halter. I just clipped some reins onto it because I noticed that he needed a little bit more time turning, but I didn't like to use the bit as much as he was needing encouragement. And this is something I've ran into with a lot of horses. They don't want to go straight. So I know a lot of people deal with this a different way, but I just kept turning him until he decided to keep towards where I wanted to go, and then I praised him and then asked him to go forward, and he did really good. So now here is Blaze. I believe one of his first few rides, either his 3rd or 4th ride. I know it's not his 2nd or 1st. So Houdini and Blaze are very different. Blaze is hard to get going, but pretty decently easy to turn. You can see that he likes to move his butt a ton. He likes to really move his hindquarters around, but that's okay. And so sometimes he needs a little bit more encouragement, because all Blaze wanted to do was move his hindquarters. He didn't really want to go forward, when that's all Houdini would want to do. Is Houdini would love to go forward, love to stop, love to do all that. And so Blaze, I think, ride him in a bit the ride after this one. Maybe not. But I know this is one of our early rides because of how I'm riding and how he is and how he's traveling. He's a little, if you can tell, he's a tiny bit stiff, a little not really wanting to do much. That was a pretty stop. Before I get on a horse, I always make sure that they know my stop cue, which for me, it's whoa. Because then once I'm on the horse and I say it, they're not going to have a big problem with it. So Blaze is also a little mouthy, but that's just because he's a young horse and he wants to put everything in his mouth and just go for it. Just eat it. And so I just ignore it, and it's practically gone away. He's still young. He'll still kind of use that curiosity, and he'll still kind of mouth on things. But that's okay. That's just a baby horse thing. You don't really want to punish them for something that they're doing when it's a new thing, because they might be telling you something, or they might just be behaving like how a young horse is supposed to behave. So I also am riding a little more forward on him because he's a little bit harder to get to go forward. That's a really good stop too. Blaze really had a really nice stop on him. And then these next clips are later that summer. Well, that clip was, I think, in also November or December. And this clip is around June, I believe. Yes. And so you'll see me riding with a makeshift tie down in these clips. That's okay. I know a lot of people don't like to use tie downs. I don't like to use tie downs, but for Blaze, since his head was being held up really high and he didn't understand how to put his head down, I was working on the cue plus with a tie down, and it really helped him out. I think this is one of the rides I was riding him in a bit. You can see him kind of mouthing it a little bit. But that's just how new horses are going to treat a bit. And you don't want to just put something that makes them have to close their mouth, because then they're not ever going to learn to hold it by themselves, hold their bit by themselves. Nowadays, if I throw a bit on Blaze, he's absolutely amazing. His mouth's closed. Over there, I am in the very back with Blaze. There was a huge puddle of water, so I took him back there to see how he'd react, and just to kind of get him to do something new. One thing you always want to do with a horse, always, doesn't matter where you are in your training, always put something new in there. It doesn't have to be a big thing, it doesn't have to be a small thing, it doesn't have to be, you just need something new in there. Like with Houdini, I know I had done a ton with him, and eventually I needed to do something new, so that was actually, if you guys saw that, that was actually a really nice little walk to trot that he did, that Blaze did. But I do a lot of, so I don't necessarily ride in like splint boots or whatever you want to call them, polo wraps, but I know that whenever I had done something with my horses over 2 times and they were getting bored of it, I would always put like boots or something in the equation, and then that'll make them use their feet a little bit more and get used to it. So here is a later video of me and Blaze, kind of later in that summer. He's not in a bit, he's in a Bosal Hackamore. He can walk, trot, canter. And so after using the tie down for just like 2-3 rides, he started understanding the cues to have his head down. I would never ever do any kind of roll cur on my horses. What Blaze is doing is he's just responding to the pressure that I just slightly lift up on the Bosal, and that kind of does a lever reaction, and so he wants to put his head down. So this is my horse Pineberrie, the one who died in 2020. You guys didn't see much of him. That was me kind of demonstrating how different horses can be, like Blaze's walk, Houdini's walk, Pineberrie's walk. They were all different. Each of them ride a different way. And then here's me on Marque. This is just like a quick little, like, I know you guys want a horse that can do all that, but if you want a horse that is safe and can walk, trot, canter with no problem, ride bareback with no problem, you've just got to have patience. And here's Marque in one of our, like, I guess, horse club meetings. We were practicing Western pleasure. She has a really hard time with it, but she's gotten better. But yeah, so all of these clips are just kind of showing you that if you train to a point where your horse doesn't enjoy being ridden, they're not going to want to be ridden. This is Marque's reaction to a lot of things. She couldn't collect herself. She hated it when I would steer with my legs, and that's all because her early owners didn't take their time with her, and they just kind of rushed it and just said, okay, throw a saddle on her, let her buck it out, and she'll be fine. So this is just a reminder that to be able to do all that, you're probably going to run into some problems down the road. That's okay. Don't worry about it. Here's Blaze and me on bareback, and he's a sweetheart. I always make sure he's desensitized. I can clap, I can yell, I can sing, I can scream, whatever. And we don't ride a ton bareback, but yeah, so that's just a reminder. If you want a horse that can do all that, you've got to start at the very beginning, just like Houdini and Blaze early on. So, yeah. So this is just kind of wrapping it up. I hope this kind of helps you guys. For first rides, I want you all to remember, take it slow. Don't push the horses. I know a lot of people will start their horses off, their first rides, with loping everywhere. I personally would recommend don't quite do that, just solely because if you make rides feel like a ton of work early on, it's gonna be so hard to ride your horses later, because then the horses will view that as work and not like fun time with their trainer or their owner. So just make sure that you're considering how your horse will react, what it needs, what it wants. But yeah, so just wear helmets, be safe, don't overload your horse, don't overload yourself. If you are genuinely scared of getting on your horse, you have not done enough work with that horse, so don't get on it. Work with it on the ground until you feel comfortable enough to get on the horse. But if it's the type of fear that you know you've done enough work with the horse, but you're just scared of getting on them, that's when you kind of have to face that fear and just hop on them. But just make sure you've done enough work on the ground, and you should be a-okay. So yeah, I do need new video ideas. If you have a video idea and you've made it this far in my video, which is impressive, good job. Give yourself a hand. Put down below what you think I should do for video ideas. Anyway, this is getting pretty long. I'll close it out. But yeah, so have fun, everybody.